This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
I'm Roby Brock. Welcome to this edition of Talk Business and Politics. We're glad to have you with us. It was day 51 of the 93rd Arkansas General Assembly. Several news threads coming out of today's session business. Let's give you a recap. In a meeting of the Joint Energy Committee, Public Service Commission Chairman Ted Thomas told legislators he would not paint a rosy picture. The winter storms of 2 weeks ago that knocked out power across the South will lead to a spike in gas and electric bills for consumers. And Thomas said, quote, most of this will be paid by Arkansas ratepayers. You can read full coverage on our website at talkbusiness.net. House Bill 1338 by Representative Robin Lundstrom cleared the Senate State Agencies Committee. It raises the signature threshold for a presidential candidate to appear on the ballot in Arkansas from 1,000 signatures to 5,000 signatures, and now heads to the full Senate as its last hurdle. House Bill 1546 by Representative Lanny Fite, a repeal of the state soft drink tax, which for more than 25 years has helped support the state's Medicaid program, was discussed in the House Revenue and Tax Committee. There was not a vote today. It was just a member discussion for what looks to be like one of the bigger tax cut fights in the session. And Senate Bill 6, the controversial abortion ban bill led by Senator Jason Rapert, was debated in the House Public Health Committee. 19 of the 20 members on that committee are Republican. You can guess how the vote went. And we have a roundup of all the day's legislative activity on our website at talkbusiness.net. Be sure and check that out. A quick break, and we're back with the latest on the coronavirus front. Governor Asa Hutchinson holding his weekly press conference today. And we'll be joined by State Senator Clarke Tucker, Democrat of Little Rock, for a look at what's going on in election laws in the state legislature. Stay tuned. Talk Business and Politics is sponsored in part by Capital Advisors Group and...
You'll find us at the end of a lot of long country roads, covering over 60% of the great state of Arkansas. Our 17 electric distribution cooperatives are working day and night to provide reliable, affordable power to over 500,000 homes, farms, and businesses, just like yours. The Electric Cooperatives of Arkansas, your local energy partners.
They say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. But if you're looking for something more, Walmart has you covered. We provide quality care, no appointment necessary. Whether you're looking for fresh, healthy groceries to fill your prescription, get a flu shot, or pick up your next pair of glasses, we're standing by with in-store health professionals available across the country to offer patient-first, affordable care whenever you need it. Apples, optional.
Governor Asa Hutchinson gave his weekly press conference on COVID-19. Here are some highlights. More than 1 million vaccines have been received in Arkansas, and more than 650,000 Arkansans have received at least one dose, the governor said Tuesday. He's expanding vaccine eligibility to an estimated 49,000 food manufacturing workers. The Arkansas Department of Health also establishing a vaccine clinic at 5 county health clinics in the state to reach populations with low vaccine uptake. The clinics will be in Conway, Dallas, Lee, Mississippi, and Pulaski counties. Governor Hutchinson also announced that the more transmissible UK variant of the COVID virus has been detected in Arkansas. Though testing is lower, the number of reported cases, hospitalizations, and deaths all trending lower. In the last 24 hours, just 440 new cases reported. Hospitalizations down 25. Just 4 new deaths reported in the last day, which is 4 too many, but well below the double-digit daily numbers we've been seeing. President Joe Biden said today that the country is on track to have enough vaccine supply for every adult in America by the end of May. That's moving up a timeline from July. That was a factor in the governor quickening the pace of vaccination points to opening up eligibility to 1C level in early April. That could lead to another 425,000 Arkansans being vaccinated. All of this is news moving in the right direction. And you can catch more of the governor's thoughts from that press conference at our website at talkbusiness.net. When we come back from this word from our sponsor, State Senator Clarke Tucker talks about some of the election reform measures that are moving their way through the state legislature. We're back right after this. Talk Business and Politics is sponsored in part by Impact Management Group and
We have a large commitment to our solar for good reason. It lowers customers' rates, it's emissions free.
Entergy Arkansas is the largest provider of solar in the state of Arkansas.
Utility scale solar is much more economic for customers. We're going to operate it, we're going to maintain it, we're going to focus on it. That's what we do for a living.
We want to continue to find ways to partner with our customers to meet their renewable energy goals.
Customers want this, we want to provide it. So our commitment is for the long term.
Stepping into the unknown, it can be difficult to find the way. But with the compassion of the cross and the security of the shield, obstacles become openings. As we have for more than 65 years, we'll continue to light the way, using our knowledge to create new healthcare solutions, giving you the power to shine forward to whatever awaits tomorrow. Arkansas Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Live fearless.
Welcome back to the program. Joining me now is State Senator Clarke Tucker, Democrat of Little Rock. Senator, always good to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, Robbie.
Let us begin with a couple of bills you popped out of your Senate State Agencies Committees today. Senate Bill 383, Senate Bill 384, they both deal with maximum contributions and some limitations, as well as raising a maximum limit there. Just a little bit of what's the technical cleanup there?
Yeah. So it was with another bill that we were discussing in the State Agencies Committee earlier this session. Bob Ballinger actually made a point that I really agreed with. Some people may find that surprising, but that's why I think this bill is going to pass, because Senator Ballinger and I are on the same page. But anyway, we realized that under current law, you can run for one office, raise a max contribution from someone, then switch to another office and raise another max contribution from the same donor during the same election. And as Bob pointed out, it really incentivizes candidates to go ahead and spend all their money down, increase their name ID or whatever the case may be, and then switch the office that they're running for and raise another max contribution. That's really not the intent of the law, I don't think. The intent of the law is you can only raise one max contribution per candidate, and that's what the bill does.
And you also, another bill raised the maximum contribution amount. That explain, I guess that's a difficult one for some people to understand the technicality of that.
Yeah. So we passed the law, and it's in the Ethics Commission rules that the maximum contribution, that they set it in 2015 at $2,000, and to adjust it with the consumer price index, rounded up to the nearest 100. And we've always, so in 2018, the max contribution was $2,700. In the 2020 cycle, that formula pushed the max contribution to $2,800. Well, in the Arkansas code, it still read $2,700. So technically, every candidate that raised a $2,800 contribution in the 2020 cycle was in violation of the Arkansas code, even though that's not the intent. So originally, I thought, okay, I'll just update the number so that it's current. And Graham Sloan, the director of the Ethics Commission, pointed out, hey man, if you change it to 2,800, it's going to be out of date by next month, because it's fixing to change to 2,900 then anyway. So why don't we just put the formula in the code so we don't have to change it every other year? So that's what I ended up doing.
I'm going to file some ethics complaints this afternoon now that I know that there's so many people in violation. So thanks for the tip on that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some other bills that are working their way around the legislature right now. You have one in particular, Senate Bill 217. It addresses absentee voting, potential election fraud. What's the problem that you see that this bill is attempting to solve?
I really want to simplify the absentee voting process for voters, and then on the vote counting side to really strengthen the integrity of it. The first thing that came to my attention was during the 2020 cycle, we learned that absentee ballots can't start being counted until 8:30 a.m. on election day, and they have to be finished being counted by 7:30 p.m. on election day. That's not the case for any other type of ballot, which is mostly just in-person voting or early voting. They can count those as long as it takes to be counted. That's never been an issue before 2020. But in 2020, there was a real concern in some counties that there would be, because of the pandemic, that there would be too many absentee ballots that they couldn't count during that 11-hour period. And so what if they can only count 10,000, but 15,000 absentee ballots were cast? Do those other 5,000 votes just not get to be counted? That's not right. So the governor and the Secretary of State, in my judgment, did the right thing and said, we're in a pandemic, we're going to count all the ballots no matter how long it takes. That's really inconsistent with the code. And so I want to change the law to make sure that all absentee ballots that are properly and validly cast get counted. So that's an example. Once I really dug into the absentee voting process, I identified a number of things that, in my opinion, need to be changed. And I'll just give you, a couple other examples. One is, in a lot of circumstances, when you apply for an absentee ballot right now, your application is in effect for 1 year, and that's the default whether you realize it or not. So in 2020, we had a number of people who applied for an absentee ballot for the primary election in March. It was still in effect for the general election without their knowledge. And so some people got mailed a ballot and they said, hey, this is voter fraud. They're just mailing ballots out to people. And it kind of undermines faith in the system. Really, the bigger concern there is some people showed up to vote in person and they said, apologies, ma'am, you've already requested an absentee ballot. And they were turned away from the polls, and that's problematic. Another issue is the language on the absentee ballot application is very technical. I mean, it's quite frankly, it's difficult for anybody to understand, even someone who works in this stuff like I do. And so I have it in the bill that the Secretary of State needs to put language on there that can be easily understood by the typical registered voter. And it puts the date of the election on the absentee ballot application. So that adds clarity. The last thing I'll mention, Roby, is, which is really probably the biggest change in the bill, is the way in which the poll workers and the county boards of election commissioners review the absentee voting materials to make sure that everything is counted properly. No ballots are mislabeled like happened in Pulaski County in 2020. And we just make sure that as many votes that are properly and legally cast are actually counted, and that there's no confusion around which ballots are to be counted.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, and I have made this explanation a lot publicly as well as privately, don't understand all of the bipartisan checks and balances that go into counting votes at the local level, at the precinct level even, and which
That's right.
makes the allegations that a national election was somehow stolen just absurd. Let's move on. Senate Bill 230 is another bill that I think you and Representative Gazaway are co-sponsors on. It deals with voters with disabilities. Tell me what you're trying to accomplish with that legislation.
Yeah. So Spencer Hawks is the lead House sponsor. Representative Gazaway is on the joint resolution. So anyway, the Senate Bill 230, it came to my attention that there's a cap in Arkansas as to how many voters a person can assist. And so there are reasons spelled out in the code as to why a voter might need assistance. And you reference a disability. If someone's blind or illiterate, they need someone basically to read the ballot to them. Another circumstance is if English is not their first language, then they need someone to translate the ballot for them. So Arkansas United filed a lawsuit last fall related to this because it's inconsistent with the Federal Voting Rights Act. But the inconsistency is that in the Arkansas Code, you can assist no more than 6 people. Under the Federal Voting Rights Act, you have the right, if you have a disability or a need along those lines, to identify whoever you want to assist you in the voting process. But if in Arkansas, if that person has already helped 6 other people, that limits your ability to choose who you want. And that's what the inconsistency is. There are checks and balances there because poll workers are there in every precinct, as you said, to observe the assistance that a person is providing to a voter. So, and it's also a crime, which it should be, for that person to try to sway the person's vote. And I'm not seeking to change any of that at all. Basically, this bill just removes that 6-person cap. So, for example, and which is Arkansas United's issue, if you have a precinct with a lot of Spanish-speaking voters, which those clearly exist in the state, you don't have to get a different translator for every 6 voters. And they can just provide that service with the checks and balances that already exist. And that'll hopefully save the state some legal fees on that lawsuit that I think the state would lose.
My apologies to Representative Hawks for not giving him the proper credit there. Thanks for straightening me out on that. All right, Senate Joint Resolution 6 is for open primaries in Arkansas. This is one potential referred constitutional amendment. The legislature gets 3, but there'll have to be some horse trading to go on to see what comes out of the legislature on this. What's the argument for doing this now?
Yeah, I think it's really voter access and voter rights. In Arkansas, and I'm going to speak generally because I'm not targeting any party or any particular candidate. This is really a nationwide problem in my judgment. Legislators in the federal and state level all over the country, by and large, run in districts that are safe, either as safe Republican seats or safe Democratic seats. And the byproduct of that is that those politicians are beholden to their primary voters and not to everyone who lives in their district. And the other side of that in my opinion is problematic is, I'll just pick on my own party for a second. If you're a Republican living in a safe Democratic seat, then you have very little say in who your elected official is because that decision is made in the primary that you don't vote in. So by the time the general election comes around, that decision has already been made, and you don't really have any input on who represents your legislative interests. And clearly the inverse is true on the other side. So what open primaries does is you walk into the ballot on primary day and you don't get a Republican ballot or a Democratic ballot. Your ballot lists every candidate running for that office, no matter what party they're running for. And you can vote for whoever you want. You can vote for a Democrat for governor, a Republican for attorney general, or whatever the case may be. And at that point, the top 2 vote getters in the primary proceed to the general election, no matter what party they're from. So you can have 2 members of the same party on the ballot in the general election. And so that's where I'm trying to get to. Even in the safe seats, everyone who lives in that district, no matter whether they're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or whoever the case may be, they participate. They get to participate in the decision of who represents them in the legislative branch. And I think, my proposal may not be perfect. Few legislative proposals are, but I really want to generate conversation around this, because I think, Roby, the partisanship is really a problem in America. And this is designed to try to get around that to some extent, because the political incentive right now in a safe seat is there's a political disincentive to working with people on the other side of the aisle, because that can get you beat in a primary, which right now is the only election that matters for most politicians. Mm-hmm. And this makes you accountable to everyone who lives in your district and not just your primary voters.
We did see a different version of this as a citizens initiative that got kicked off of the ballot last fall in 2020. If this doesn't get passed out of the legislature, do you think we might see a citizens movement to do something like this again?
I would expect to see that. I would have voted for it. That version is different than what I have. That was a top 4. Mine is what they call a top 2. Whoever the top 2 vote getters are in the primary move to the general. That was a top 4 where the top 4 vote getters move on, and then there's a ranked choice vote on the final 4. It's a little more complicated. I think there are arguments for and against that and the top 2. Quite frankly, Roby, I don't have high hopes for my proposal to be one of the 3 constitutional amendments referred out this legislative session. But I think it's an important part of the ongoing conversation about reforming our democracy. And that's why I wanted to file it, and appreciate you giving me a chance to talk about it. And because I do expect it to be on the ballot in November of 2022. And I think this dialogue with the public needs to keep going.
All right. He is State Senator Clarke Tucker, Democrat of Little Rock. One last question for you here. One of your old classmates from Central High School, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, is running for governor as a Republican, obviously.
Right.
Maybe we have a high school reunion. You think maybe you jump out there and offer her a little other side of the debate there?
I thought you were going to ask if I would endorse her. And I think in a lot of places in Arkansas, that would hurt her candidacy for any Democrat to endorse her. But no, you're right. She was 1 year behind me at Central, and we were on the Central High debate team together. And really, there's a lot of people from that Central High debate team who I see down at the state capitol are engaged in public policy issues all over the place. So that's great. And I always had a good relationship with Sarah when we were in high school. So who knows, maybe we'll get a chance to work together again.
Maybe you'll get a chance to work together. Maybe you get a chance to compete against each other someday. So, all right, I won't push you on that one. Senator Clarke Tucker, thank you so much.
Thank you, Roby.
All right, that's all for today's program. I'm Roby Brock. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time.